Hello everyone, welcome back to the Anxiety Project channel. Today I'm talking about change and why people who decide to live in comfort with this excess amount of food and alcohol and television and pornography and gratification, why this can lead someone into a more of a nihilistic, hopelessness, hedonic, unsatisfied kind of state. I mean, this idea that a lot of young men specifically hold up in their minds as this kind of Andrew Tate-like figure of someone who's more assertive and that gets all of this fame and attention and women, that seems kind of intriguing and attractive. It's that hidden treasure that kind of gleams toward us that we don't have when people like Russell Brand get to that point where they attain all that fame and status and attention and gratification, specifically sex and drugs. They realize that there is this point where they are in such a bad place that they have no choice but to form a different frame of how they perceive the world and to structure themselves in a more religious and spiritual way of being that actually provides them with that sense of meaning that actually is non-existent in those pursuits. Now, I really want to dive into change and why we're so resistant to change. I mean, we all inhabit a certain frame of reality and we establish this frame through repetition. What we master, our routines and our job and our relationships and the house and the kids and the dogs and it's like what is routine becomes what's mastered. But when things become disrupted, people fall into this stressful, anxious state of being, and that's because their frame is now interrupted with an anomaly, and the anomaly inhabits uncertainty of the future, but not only that though, the present and the past. So if you're fired from a job, what happens is, well, you're uncertain about the future and whether you're going to get another job, but you're also uncertain about the present because, well, what am I going to do about my finances and my family? But not only that, your past. Maybe taking this job in the first place was a stupid idea. Maybe now that I'm separated from the job, wow, I wasted time. Maybe I wasted 10 years at this job that was unfulfilling, and I didn't realize it was unfulfilling until now that I was separated from it. When this kind of trust is broken, or when your frame is broken, and then you're now encountering the anomaly, what do you do? Why are we so resistant? Because now your right hemisphere is generating imagistic hypotheses of what's lurking in the anomaly, which is the right thing to do, especially when you're out in the woods hunting. And that's how we actually evolved. We evolved in this kind of chaotic world, right? And we only inhabit such a small frame of that. And outside of that frame is kind of darkness, animals that can eat us, bugs that can kill us, diseases, decay. It's a really harsh place to be. So no wonder our brains have evolved to generate potential threats lurking out in the darkness. And then we also have this voice coming from our left hemisphere that says, oh, hell no. I'm not dealing with that. And then you kind of shrink back into kind of comfort. You kind of shrink back into what's familiar. And so you don't want to change. And a lot of people don't. They want to stick with their identity. They want to stick with the frame that they currently inhabit. And so why change is actually necessary, because I thought about this for a long time. Why not just stay in comfort and watch all the pornography you can muster, and why not play all the games you can on your computer, and why not just eat anything that you can get from Uber Eats and just live on the couch? And well, first of all, Dostoevsky mentioned this in his book Notes from Underground. He said that if you gave everything everyone ever dreamed of, like sex, cake, food, comfort, that they'll immediately, unconsciously burn it to the ground so that something interesting could actually happen. Excitement, novelty. We actually need novelty in our lives. We're like sled dogs. We need a load to carry. We need to explore new terrain. It's in our nature. It's in our biological nature. So if it's in our nature, how can these things actually be of use to us? And from my experience going through pornography recovery, meaning comes from taking on responsibility and staving off, doing what I can now to making the right sacrifices now to stave off the chaos of being anxious or depressed or feeling unwell or disease and decay, staving off that, having my eyes open enough. That's the goddess of chaos, Kali, the Hindu goddess of chaos. And here's a picture of her right here. And as you can see, there's a ring of fire around her because obviously fire is something that can really, it's of awe, right? Fire is something that transfixes us and it hypnotizes us and it can burn us. And it can also be of good use, obviously. As you can see, she's devouring the thing that she's given birth to, intestines first. And she has a headdress of skulls around her. And she's the thing that goes bump in the night. And she's the thing that can manifest if you are blind and if you are unawake. And a lot of us today become anxious and depressed because we're blind and we refuse to open our eyes. And a lot of the time people open their eyes when they actually reach low places and they actually encounter Kali, the excess of alcohol. It wakes them up to, having some sort of liver damage or violence with a loved one, or, excess of pornography leads someone to be socially anxious and isolated and awkward and, even more afraid to talk to a real woman or man. There are always consequences. And I've noticed that when you observe people that engage in really bad habits that possess them, they have no control over, because when they try and stop doing that habit, they just can't seem to stop doing it. What happens is there's a ratio happening of benefits to consequences. So the person will say, well, I get a good benefit of this. I feel relieved after I watch pornography. I feel, or maybe there's just one. There's not many benefits to it. I mean, you feel relieved and it's entertaining for about half an hour. And it kind of distracts people. A lot of people say that. It distracts me, kind of relieves stress. That's not really good, because it's not a really good thing to distract yourself from real world problems. That's like Tinkerbell, right? Entertaining the thing that's not real. The consequences, like the Medusa, like there's 5 snakes attached to one thing, the head, being socially awkward and, feeling guilty and drained after, and erectile dysfunction, and all of these things come about. And with sex, even the same thing. Well, I just want to have one night stands. It's like, yeah, you do that for a short time, but you realize you're always in this pursuit and you're never satisfied. You think the next one's going to be better. And then once you get it, you feel guilty, you feel emotionally compromised, you feel like, oh no, what if I got her pregnant? Oh no, what if I get a sexually transmitted disease? There's more consequences to that. A lot of people are not awake to these consequences until they actually happen. And that's the thing. That's where I ended up in my 20s, is like things got so bad. I had to open my eyes to where I was. And William Blake said this beautifully. He said, the road to excess leads to the palace of wisdom, but also the palace of despair. I think the wisdom and despair is the same thing. Because you go into despair, that's where wisdom is generated. You have to get to hell in order to realize that your way of functioning was insufficient, and now you have to adopt a new way of functioning in the world. Because these habits, like fast food, because pornography or shopping or social media, they're so dopaminergic in nature, there is this constant need for novelty within that. When you scroll on social media, you're always looking for the next best video. You're always on this edge of novelty. That's why people who watch pornography slowly accumulate more erotic content, is because they're always on the edge of what they deem as novel or exciting. And so they're always in this pursuit, because dopamine is the reward neurochemical, but to understand dopamine, it's the pursuit rather than the attainment. That's crazy because you never feel like you arrive. I never felt like I arrived, like I got to a place. I only noticed that when I would attain it, I would feel even worse off. I felt like at the end of that road, there was this hollowness that these questions of what am I doing and where am I going? The realization of time being that, well, I just spent all of my internal resources on this pursuit and I attain it. Now, what is there left of me? And now it's like, well, going forward, I have to then now pursue the next one. But what about my job? Shouldn't I like pay attention to that even more? Or shouldn't I pay attention to my relationships even more? Or shouldn't I pay attention to my overall well-being more and more? And so you kind of become this slave to this internal possession, that this thing is just pulling you along on this cord, and you never feel like you're attaining something worthwhile. People that manage to break away from this, they report that the responsibility of overcoming this provided way more meaning, and they've gained so much more self-respect for themselves rather than the being in that comfort bubble of that possession. I was in this pursuit, but the struggle is really what I needed. That's where the meaning actually came, because I was able to sacrifice this pornography for these hosts of positive benefits. Now I don't have to spend this half an hour a day, sometimes twice a day, to this demonic force. And as a consequence, I value the opposite sex even more. I'm not overly stimulated and possessed by sexual cues in my environment, and I have more self-respect. I feel like I have overcome a dragon, and that's where I'm going to leave you today on this video. Thank you, everyone. Please leave your comments below. What do you think? Please subscribe to the channel because I post videos and I post a podcast here weekly. Rise above anxiety. I'll see you next time. Thank you, everybody, for being a part of this community. Please comment below. Also, give this a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, because then you'll be the first to know whenever I release a new video.